Good evening. Welcome to this special forum that we're bringing to you from the Camarillo online virtual format. This is David Marin with the League of Women Voters, and this forum is brought to you by Cal State University Channel Islands and the League of Women Voters. Tonight we'll hear from the two candidates running for Congressional District 25, Julia Brownlee and Rhonda Baldwin-Kennedy. At this time, I'd like to first introduce the president of your university, Dr. Erica Beck.
Well, good evening, and thank you for allowing us to participate, and welcome to the forum for California's 26th Congressional District. I am genuinely delighted that Cal State Channel Islands has the honor of serving as a co-host for this important dialogue. Each election cycle, the League of Women Voters organizes and moderates the civil discourse that we all need for our democracy to flourish, and we are grateful for their commitment to vetting the individuals who seek to serve us in the United States House of Representatives. I would also like to express my appreciation to the candidates for their participation in this important process. At Cal State Channel Islands, our faculty and staff seek to advance an informed citizenry by facilitating knowledge in service of the common good. Tonight, our academic community, alongside the League of Women Voters, hopes to advance knowledge for us all as we offer a space for reasoned deliberation on items critical to the future of our communities. Participating in elections is one of the greatest freedoms we enjoy in this country. It is an act that has a profound impact on our own lives, as well as members of our community for generations to come. And so, given that I am an educator, I would like to give all of you a homework assignment and encourage you to get informed about local measures, propositions, and of course, candidates, and exercise your right to vote. I look forward to hearing more about why each of the candidates with us this evening believes they are the best candidate to represent our collective voice, and I thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Beck. At this time, it's my pleasure to welcome the president of the League of Women Voters of Ventura County, Betsy Patterson.
Good evening. I'm happy to welcome you on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Ventura County. 100 years ago, the 19th Amendment was ratified, giving women the right to vote across the nation. We hold the right to vote precious, since not all people were given that right in the original Constitution. And for 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been dedicated to encouraging civic engagement and informing voters about the candidates and the issues. From its beginnings and continuing today, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We do not support or oppose any candidate or political party. Each of us has a voice in our government, but only if we use our vote. To be informed voters, we must ask questions of the candidates and understand the pros and cons of the ballot propositions before we cast our vote. This is your opportunity as voters to learn about the candidates and where they stand on issues important to you. Thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you have many of your questions answered by the candidates, and be sure to make a plan to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. At this time, I'd like to introduce the two candidates who are running for Congressional District number 26, Julia Brownlee and Rhonda Baldwin-Kennedy. Ask them to join us. One of the things that we're going to do tonight is first have opening statements from both candidates. Then they will be responding to questions prepared in advance. We picked 5 subject areas to cover, and that includes the pandemic, racial equality, military and veterans, the infrastructure, and of course the economy. After we get through with the opening statements, we'll begin those questions. We randomly drew numbers earlier to decide the order. Julia Brownlee will go first, followed by Rhonda Baldwin-Kennedy. At the end of the evening, we will reverse the order. One thing to know is that when this program is done, within several days, the university will be posting this, so it is being recorded and will be available. With that, I do want to thank both candidates for agreeing to participate this evening. And when you are ready, Julia, you can begin.
women voters, Cal State Channel Islands, David Marin and Betsy Patterson for putting this forum together tonight. I love representing Ventura County in Congress, and I would be incredibly honored to be able to continue to do so. Right now, the pandemic is clearly our biggest challenge. I have fought for significant funding for families, local government, research, and small businesses, and I will continue that fight. I chair the Women Veterans Task Force, and I authored the most comprehensive bill ever to pass Congress, solely focused on improving care and benefits for women veterans. Based on my experience, the Speaker appointed me to a special committee to finally address the climate crisis. We produced the most comprehensive report on climate ever produced by Congress. It will serve as a clear roadmap to address the existential threat of climate change and to build a clean energy economy. I continue to secure tens of millions of dollars in funding for the Port of Hueneme, for dredging our harbors and replenishing sand at Hueneme Beach, and for strengthening Naval Base Ventura County. And I am most proud that we have one of the best constituent casework offices in the nation, handling over 8,000 cases, answering 750,000 constituent letters, and returning close to $20 million in federal benefits owed to Ventura County families. And finally, I authored legislation to open a brand new 40,000 square foot community clinic for our veterans right here in Ventura County, slated to open next year. The times have found us. There is still much more work to do, and I would be most honored to continue to represent you and fight for you in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Rhonda Baldwin-Kennedy.
Thank you. I want to thank you for having this and holding this very important candidate forum, because it's very important and imperative that constituents have an informed decision when they're going into the voting booths or mailing in their ballots, to be able to hear both of their candidates answer hard questions. I also want to thank Julia Brownlee for her service and her time in office. However, as a mother of 6, including 3 adult children and 7-year-old triplets, I am here in the district every day. I'm a practicing attorney here in this district every day. CA 26 is my home. CA 26 is my children's home. I work here. I'm a practicing attorney here. I give countless of pro bono work. Actually, I just left this afternoon from a pro bono case in Ventura County Court, where I fight tirelessly for constitutional rights for the most underprivileged people here in CA 26. I'm asking for a new generation of Congress that comes in, that's able to work together. Congress is so divisive right now that nothing gets done. The pandemic has devastated, it's absolutely devastated CA 26. There are businesses that are closing. There are people that are unemployed. Families are being divided because children are leaving because it's simply unaffordable here. My 2 adult children, they want to leave California. One of them has already left, taking my grandchildren with them. We need to have a place that is welcoming for businesses. I will be that new voice in Congress, that voice that can reach over the aisle and work together. Like the stimulus package, there are thousands of people that need that stimulus relief, but we are caught in the middle of partisan bickering, and I will be that refreshment in Congress that can reach over the aisle and get things done. Thank you.
Thank you. Rhonda, we're going to start the first question with you. To the audience, I mentioned we have 5 categories. We're going to begin with the first one, which will be the pandemic. A little bit of background. Worldwide, the coronavirus has infected more than 38 million and killed over 1 million. In the United States, more than 7.8 million infected with over 214,000 deaths. This microscopic virus has battered our economy, closed our schools, pitted Americans against each other in unexpected ways. Rhonda, what do you believe is the single most important step Congress can do to end the pandemic, and why?
I think the most important step is to safely open businesses and safely open schools, because currently the climate in Ventura County and across the country is that the cure is worse than the disease. When we have countless numbers of businesses that are closing and folding and unemployment, we have a high rate of suicides, a high rate of depression because of the isolation. We're human beings. No matter what our party affiliations are, we're all human beings, and we need that closeness with other humans. I think that isolation and actually I believe the WHO just came out and said that shutting things down and isolating is not recommended. So I think the one thing we need to do is we need to safely figure out how to open the schools. We need to do more testing. I think there should be rapid testing available for people, because if they're negative for coronavirus, they should be able to go back to work and go back to schools. So I think that's what we need to do first, is to safely get our economy open so that businesses aren't going under. Businesses in Ventura County, we're going to lose 25% of small businesses. Those are families. How are people supposed to buy food, put food on their table, pay for their rent, pay their mortgages? This is just simply unacceptable here in America. I believe that the coronavirus is dangerous, but there's a better way to handle it. Thank you.
Julia, same question. What do you believe is the single most important thing Congress can do to end the pandemic, and why?
Well, thanks, David. First, let me just say that, the United States is 4% of the world population, but we have 20% of the deaths. We're not doing that well. We can do much better. Several Asian countries, others are pretty much back to normal, and we are not here in the United States. So what we need to do, we need a national plan that will test, that will contact trace, that will isolate, and I think when we do that, we can begin to open up community by community. But we need to do more testing. Right now, we're doing about 900,000 tests per day in the United States. All of the experts tell us that we have to do 3 to 4 million tests a day. We should be able to wake up in the morning, brush our teeth, take a test, and be able to walk out the door knowing that the community has really got their arms around this disease, that we have control of the virus and the virus doesn't have control of us. And once we are there, we can open up and really get back to some semblance of normalcy. But until we do that, it's still going to be dangerous walking out your door.
Thank you, Julia. Next question, we're going to start with you. So with global travel and transportation, the coronavirus was able to spread around the globe in a matter of months. This leads many to believe that we may see more pandemics in the future years and that we should begin preparing now. The question, Julia, is what concrete steps do you believe the federal government should do to prepare for future outbreaks?
Well, we had a plan at the beginning of this, but it wasn't followed by the Trump administration. But again, we need to have a national plan and resources set aside, stockpiles made within our country. So it's absolutely imperative that we need to be prepared. So right now with this pandemic, as I said, we need to do testing and contact tracing and isolating. But we need to also make sure that we have a national plan for a national distribution of a vaccine, hopefully, knock on wood, when we get that soon. But we need to exercise our power to be able to start producing massively all of the supplies necessary for that vaccine. One of the problems with testing is that we don't have all of the ingredients that you need. That's what delays a lot of the testing. And so we need to be out there getting the vials and the syringes and everything else that we need so that when that vaccine comes, we are ready to be able to distribute it equitably across the country. But you're right, David, we need to be sure that we are prepared and we need a national plan. Congress needs to debate it and review it so that this never, ever happens again.
Thank you. Rhonda, same question. So many believe we should be preparing now for future outbreaks. What concrete steps do you believe the federal government should take to prepare for future outbreaks?
Well, I think the number one thing we should prepare for is not shutting our economy down, is to find an effective way to deal with the virus. we have a record time. We have a vaccination that's going to be available to the general public. There are some test studies are finishing, and I think we should be in time for the flu season, so that way we have protection from the coronavirus. But I think number one priority of Congress should be to ensure that our economy stays open, that businesses aren't closed, and that schools are not closed. And that comes with testing, rapid testing, and to ensure that people can safely go back to work and school. And I just have to say, I know Congresswoman Brownlee mentioned President Trump and his administration and how they handle the coronavirus. I would like to say that Congress is the legislative branch. They have a duty of their own, and we should separate ourselves from the executive branch, which when I come in, I would come in as an individual Congresswoman. I'm not coming in as part of the Trump administration. I know a lot of people like to attach me to that, but I'm coming in to represent the people of CA 26 and their individual unique needs right here in this district. And I will absolutely make sure that businesses have the resources that they need, that families have the resources that they need to make sure that their rent is paid and there's food on their table. Thank you.
So, Rhonda, we'll stay with you for the next question. It's undeniable that Americans are divided on the proper response to the pandemic. This includes things such as wearing masks, closing schools, shutting down bars, and so on. But putting your political ideologies aside, if you two candidates can, do you believe there is something that Washington can do or should do in future crises to bring people together to face common threats?
Absolutely. We need to stop the divisiveness. They're so divided on both sides of the aisle. I am so tired of hearing about Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump, and the American people are caught in the middle. I equate it to it's a Bloods and a Crips war, and the American people are caught in the middle. We need to have representatives who will put their political differences aside and actually do what's best for the American people. And in regards to the pandemic, what I think, instead of fingers being pointed across the aisle, there's great ideas on both sides of the aisle. They just need to come together and actually exchange those ideas. I bet collectively working together, which Congress is supposed to do, we could actually come up with a comprehensive plan to beat this disease. However, when we're constantly divided, we're not coming up with a concrete plan. And additionally, there is so much confusing information about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. You have to wear a mask when you sit down to eat, but you can take it off. But when you get up, you got to go to the restroom. But it's recommended that you wash your hands after you touch your mask. How do you do that? If you wash your hands before you eat, how do you go wash your hands again when you take your mask off? There's so much confusing information. There's no testing on masks that you could just buy at a corner gas station that could actually be harmful to people. We need to have accurate, concrete, scientific information as to what to do with masks. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia, same question. Putting your political ideologies aside, if you can, do you believe there's something Washington can do or should do to handle future crises, to bring people together to face common threats?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need leadership, and we need leadership at the top to bring us together. That's most important. And right now we have a leader that wants to divide rather than to unite. And so we need that desperate leadership really at the top to bring us together, to have a national approach to this, to be patriotic about what we do and how we act and how we protect our neighbors and protect our community. And at the end of the day, we really need to establish like a Marshall Plan on all of this. So this never, ever happens again. There is no reason why this should ever happen again if we put the resources towards the proper plan and putting the resources to make sure that we have all of the supplies necessary. When this thing first started and the lack of protective gear, the lack of, obviously, that we're suffering now with testing and other things That just did not have to happen. If we had had centralized leadership bringing us together, we could have attacked this thing early on and not be in this place where over 200,000 Americans have lost their lives. It does not have to be this way. So we really need leadership at the top that's going to bring us together so we all feel patriotic about social distancing, about wearing our mask, about all the things that we should be doing so that we can have some semblance of normality.
Thank you, Julia. I'm going to move on to our next topic. I'm going to start by covering the area of racial and social inequality. Julia, you'll be up first on this question, and here it is, 2020, and our country still grapples with racial inequality and social injustice. For African Americans, multiple academic studies have shown that systemic racism from the days of slavery to today has contributed to income inequality, unfair housing policies, bias in police enforcement, lower achieving schools, and many other disparities. So question number one is around the recent protests. And around the country, we've seen new attention drawn to the differences African Americans experience with law enforcement based on their race or ethnicity. While policing often is a state or local issue, what actions would you support, Julia, at the federal level to ensure that all Americans are treated fairly and equally by both law enforcement and the judicial system?
Well, thank you for that. I agree wholeheartly that racism is institutionalized in our structures throughout government, and it is police reform is obviously extremely important. Just a few statistics: Black men are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by the police than white men. We all have witnessed, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and have lived through that 8 minute and 46 seconds. That should never happen in our country. And we need to really address this in a complete and substantial way. And it's going to take a lot of work to do this. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. But we passed in Congress a Justice and Policing Act that I think was a very positive step and a good step in the right direction. Just sadly, the Senate has been unwilling to address it. They put forward a bill that was not comprehensive, but our bill really addressed a lot of different issues like prohibiting discriminating profiling, banning chokeholds, eliminating no-knock warrants, restrictive use of deadly force, eliminating qualified immunity for our police officers. The list goes on. I could talk about it a lot.
But I have to stop you there. Thank you.
Thanks.
And Rhonda, same question to you. So what would you support at the federal level to ensure that all Americans are treated fairly and equally by both law enforcement and the judicial system?
Well, I could just say, as a Black woman in America, growing up Black in America with 2 Black sons, I understand, and I've actually personally felt the inequalities that we still experience in this country. The CA 26 has never elected a Black representative to represent this district. That tells you something. As the great-granddaughter of a runaway slave who ran away from his literal Democrat plantation for freedom to fight for his generational family, which is I'm standing here today. Of course, we need reform in the justice system. I work in the justice system. I've successfully defended some of these defendants who were railroaded because of the color of their skin. But I can say we don't need a Band-Aid for this problem. We need opportunity. Black America, minorities in America, we need generational wealth. We need equal education and equal opportunity. Doing police reform is fine and dandy, but at the end of the day, if we don't fix the root problem, we're going to continue to have those problems. And I like to address the number and countless number of Black males that are murdered every single day in the inner cities. That is something that I would like Congress to address. Not the small number of Black Americans that are killed by police officers, but the literal thousands of little Black children, little Black boys and little Black girls who are slaughtered in their beds in the inner city. I would like Congress to step up and do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. We're going to start with you on the next question. And reparations is the making of amends for a past wrong. Reparations can be financial payments or other actions to help those who have been wronged. There currently is a bill in Congress to create a commission to simply study the various proposals for reparations for Black Americans, not to actually enact anything. Rhonda, if you were elected, would you support this bill? And if not, do you believe reparations are due to Black Americans?
I believe reparations are due, but I believe reparations are due in another form. I am a direct descendant of slaves, so I would actually benefit from that bill. However, I would prefer to see my children have equal opportunity, to see my children have equal opportunity to be business owners, to have an equal education, to have a higher learning education, to have college degrees from Ivy League schools, to experience the same wealth, the generational wealth that other groups experience. And as an attorney's perspective, what I would look at is look at the current businesses who you can trace back to slavery, who you can trace their wealth back to slavery, and maybe they should be paying reparations. That's something I would be willing to explore. But I don't think we should have the sins of the father, the son being responsible for the sins of the father. So I don't support just reparations, passing out reparations. I believe in reparations in form of opportunity, business opportunity, like the opportunity zones that were created. We have several opportunity zones right here in Ventura County in CA 26. They're not being developed. Why is that? Those are job opportunities for minorities, for women businesses. That's the things that we should be exploring and giving more money and for business opportunities so that we can have that generational wealth. We as a Black community deserve the generational wealth, not just more passing out reparations like welfare.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Julia, same question to you. Do you support this bill? If so, why? And what's your view on reparations?
Yeah, well, I have supported the bill. I'm a co-author of the bill in Congress, so I support it. And I think, reparations is something that absolutely Congress needs to address. And reparations really should come in the form of wealth building opportunities, like, addressing racial disparities in education and housing and business ownership. All of that. I mean, we know and are very keenly aware of the wealth disparities in our country and the economic divide. And that division is very much divided by minorities, racially, and it needs to be fixed. And so, there is so much more that we need to do. But if we begin to start investing in education and housing, building our communities, helping to build minority small businesses, all of those things I think should be part of reparations. And certainly within education is so clearly important. That is where this wealth divide absolutely begins. And I could talk about this issue for hours, but we need a high quality education system. We need to start at preschool or before so that every child that enters school is ready to go and gets a high quality education. And if that happens, things are going to improve.
Thank you, Julia. We're going to start the next question with you, Julia. In this particular congressional district, there is a diverse population that's facing challenges in housing, employment, healthcare, education. Do you believe government has a role to play in reducing and eliminating social disparities? And if you are elected, are there concrete action steps you plan to take to improve the lives of the diverse constituents in your district?
Yeah, absolutely. Federal government absolutely has a role in this. Certainly federal government does, state government does, county government does, and local government does. All together, collectively, we all have a role and a responsibility to do this. So we, as I said earlier, we need to invest much more in education. I was in the state legislature previous to being a member of Congress, and I know how we don't invest properly here in California around our education. We need a lot more affordable housing in this district. No one should be homeless, and we can address that issue. And we've got to do things like in terms of the federal government, making sure that it's equal pay for equal work, raising the minimum wage, making sure that we have paid sick leave, paid family leave. We need childcare. Childcare is critically important and impacts Black women most specifically, not only because they tend to be the providers in childcare, but they're the ones having to remove themselves from the workforce because they typically are single parents and have to be responsible for their children. So there is much more that we need to do that I would like to talk about, but let me just say, yes, the federal government has a very important role to play.
Thank you. Rhonda, same question. Do you believe the government has a role to play in reducing and eliminating social disparities? If you are elected, are there concrete action steps you plan to take to improve the lives of your diverse constituents?
Yes, I just like to comment briefly on the fact that Black women are mostly single parents, and like to point out that that was systematically created by welfare system that didn't allow a two-parent home. So that happens for a reason. And yes, I was a single parent for a while after divorce, and I raised 3 children on my own, put myself through law school, and here I am today running for Congress. But yes, I do. I actually had the opportunity to sit down and speak with Secretary Ben Carson about a new program that I'd like to introduce. It's an FHA program, rehauling it to where you base qualifying for an FHA loan based on your rental history and not your credit score, because the credit bureaus are 3 private organizations that have been racist, and it dictates where you live, what kind of car you're going to drive, even how you vacation or when you're going to vacation, because if you can't afford it, you can't get a loan to go on vacation. But here, if it's based on your rental history, a lot of people have been renting for 20 years. They've basically bought that house. This is an opportunity for the minority community, who it vastly affects the minority community, to be able to buy a house here in Ventura County or across the country. And it's shown that when you have a high ownership, home ownership, education is improved, crime goes down in the neighborhood, and there's more cohesive neighborhood. As a Black woman, I understand these problems and I want to help solve them. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. I'm going to stay with you for the next question. We'll move to a new category. It's time to take a look at the national and local economy. Rhonda, some people argue that state and local policies mandating social distancing are the primary factors driving the pandemic recession, while others argue that even without these mandates, economic activity would be sluggish. Which is closer to your own view? And what policies do you think must be put in place to help the country recover?
Well, I think what needs to help the country recover is to get our businesses open. And just, I like to say, adults, they just need to use common sense. I say nobody that I know, or no one is in my family that has contracted COVID. Why? Because we practice clean practices. Before there was COVID, I didn't wear shoes in my home. I bleached my floors. I wash my hands before I eat. I don't touch things in public and then touch my face. These are just common sense things that now, the CDC and the government has to tell us. Why does the government have to tell people to wash their hands before they eat, wash their hands without touching their face? This is just common practice. And I think if people just practice common hygiene and protecting themselves from the virus, we wouldn't have such high numbers. And as far as social distancing, yes, we should social distance, but that doesn't mean we need to completely close our businesses. We should social distance. We should cover our mouth when we sneeze and cough. Why do we have to tell adults to cover your mouth when you sneeze and cough? That's just something that should be common practice, which would stop the spread of the coronavirus. And I also understand that there's a higher recovery rate. Ventura County has a low infection rate and a high recovery rate. We have a low number of deaths, but we have a high number of businesses being closed. That's what we should be concentrating on. And I don't think the Congresswoman is aware, but Ventura County has
opened. Thank you, Rhonda. I'm sorry, your time's up. Julia, same question to you. Some people argue that it's the state and local policies mandating social distancing that are the primary factors driving the recession. Others argue that even without those mandates, we would have a sluggish economy. What's closer to your own view? What policies do you think must be put in place to help the country recover?
Well, I'm a firm believer that we have to get control of the virus to completely open up the way and get back to normal and get back to economic recovery. So the first and foremost thing I believe we have to do is really crush the virus, and that's goes back to testing, tracing, isolation, and treatment. Hopefully in the next six to 9 months, hopefully after the first of the year, we'll have a vaccine, but to figure out that distribution system that is equitable, to make sure that every American will eventually have access to that. But certainly first and foremost, protecting our frontline folks and our elderly, et cetera. You know, we need another relief package right now to keep the economy going. I think the first relief package that Congress passed has kept the economy afloat. Not great, but it would have been a lot worse without that kind of investment. So we need another relief package right now. Once we get into a recovery stage, then the federal government needs to put forward a really strong infrastructure bill to get really people back to work and get the economic engines running again. But I feel very, very strongly, I'm not saying we need to shut things down forever, but I think that we have to get control of the virus. And as community by community gets healthier and we've got control of the disease, well, then we can open up. We can open up our schools and our businesses and our restaurants. We all want to get there.
Thank you, Julia. I'm going to start the next question with you. Bipartisan legislation was passed earlier this year to spend over $2 trillion in response to the virus. Congress and the administration are discussing close to another $2 trillion. What specific programs do you support in the next bill? What do you oppose? And please be as specific as you can.
Well, I support really, honestly, everything that's in this second relief package. I mean, both the initial CARES Act, the relief package that we passed, is really about supporting the lives, the livelihood, and I will say the life of our democracy on top of that. This bill that we're hoping to pass, the president said today, go big or go home. So hopefully he means it. But, you know, one of the advantages of being a member of Congress is we get to talk to all of the experts, whether they're health experts or economic experts. And they have all said, we've got to make this investment to keep us going. So we want to have the resources for testing and contact tracing and the like. We need resources for our schools. We need resources we need resources for our state and local governments. You know, local governments are the last safety net, you know, for people in a community, and governors, doesn't matter Republican or Democrat across the country, are saying we need federal government. We need federal government aid. We need to extend unemployment insurance. We need to put more people, put more money in people's pockets. That was effective during CARES. We need to continue it in HEROES. And so, you know, we
have to stop you, Julia. Sorry,
all right.
Time's up. Rhonda, same question to you. In a new bill to help save the country, what specific programs do you support in the bill? What programs do you oppose? Please be specific.
Well, I support giving the stimulus money to the businesses and the people. I don't support giving more money to mismanaged states for them to mismanage those funds again. I believe that the businesses and the people living within the United States, the citizens, actually need relief. The small amount of money that they want to dole out to individuals, $1,200 and $2,400 for a family, this is California. That would even pay rent. That would even pay half the rent for people here in CA 26. That's nothing. We need a plan that's going to actually give relief to those who actually need it. California the government was mismanaged. We were in a deficit prior to coronavirus, and now Congress wants to hand over billions of dollars to these mismanaged states while the people are still suffering and their businesses are still closed. Their rent needs to be paid, because at the end of coronavirus, these bills are going to be due. Who's going to help them then? When the election is over and the bickering stops, we're going to be left, everyday citizens going to be left cleaning up the aftermath. We need comprehensive plans that actually help the people. And I believe I heard Nancy Pelosi today on the radio, and she has no intentions of cooperating and passing a relief plan, but people are suffering. Thank you.
You're welcome. You touched on this. I'm going to move on to the next question. Rhonda, in light of the massive spending, which is substantially increasing the national debt, what do you believe should, if anything, be done about these types of deficits? Do you support increased taxes? Are there cuts in spending, such as military or Social Security or healthcare? Do you have any specific ideas how to deal with the national debt?
Yes. First of all, I would say that I would never cut the military. Our men and women in the armed forces, our active military men and women in our armed forces is going to be one of my number one priorities. Veterans, number one, of course, because my father is a Vietnam vet, they will always be taken care of. But I think we tend to forget about those active men and women in military that we need to support. So no, I would never cut the military budget. What I would do is I would actually, maybe everyone in Congress and Senate should take a pay cut and have term limits and not have being an elected official being a career. Our founding fathers intended it for us to serve the community, not to create it into we want to retire with a life pension with your salary for the rest of your life. I mean, they go back to their private practices, they go back to their jobs and their everyday businesses, and they are part of society. They are part of the community. I think we need to start, Congress needs to take a step forward and lead by example, cut their salaries, cut their retirement plan, and get on the Affordable Care Act with everyone else and not have their own special health care plan. They're not special. Thomas Jefferson said, special, equal for all, special privileges for none. And I think Congress needs to lead by example by cutting their own budget. Thank you.
Julia, same question to you. In light of the massive spending, what do you believe should, if anything, be done about these deficits? Do you support increased taxes, cuts in spending such as military or Social Security or healthcare? Do you have any specific ideas how to deal with the national debt?
I do have some ideas, but I want to go back to the last question just for a minute because I forgot to really highlight resources for businesses and particularly small businesses. It's critically important. It's $300 million is in there for that, and to sort of revamp some of those programs so that we ensure that small businesses, minority businesses are getting those resources to keep their employees on board and keep going. So I wish I had more time to talk about that. But, in terms of the question here, first, it's rolling back, I think, taxes for the super rich. The 2017 GOP tax law was a massive giveaway to big businesses and was deeply unfair to middle-class families and small businesses. We need to really get back to the drawing board and relook at all of that. It's critically important that we look at, our tax policies, big oil that doesn't need tax break, hedge fund managers don't need tax breaks. We need to close loopholes, stop multinational corporations from hiding money overseas. I mean, there is so much that we absolutely need to do. And again, all of the economists are saying to invest now when the money is cheap. And if we can invest now, we will recover quickly and better in the long run.
Thank you, Julia. Julia, you'll be up first for our next question. I'm shifting gears to talk about the military and veterans. The United States government currently spends about 3.5% of the GDP on the military. That's about a percentage point or more higher than most developed countries. We work with our allies to preserve peace and fight terrorism around the globe. Ventura County is home to Naval Base Ventura County and over 40,000 veterans. This university partners with Naval Base Ventura County to design programs that will help prepare students for careers at the base. With that being said, let's talk about the military first. Julia, which countries or stateless organizations do you feel are the greatest threats to the United States and why?
So I think our greatest threats are Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. I think China is a threat because we need to take charge of our supply chains, our global supply chains, and we need to step up on 5G and other kinds of things with China. So China is, China always looks at the long game, not the short game, but we need to start making it in America and competing with China the way we should. Russia is clearly a threat. Russia is pulling the levers, seems to have control over our president at this particular point in time. They're impacting our elections as we speak. Russia is a threat. Iran is another threat, certainly to the Middle East, thinking about Israel and the protection of Israel. Iran is a huge threat. It was very sad that that Trump threw away the Iran deal that was negotiated in the Obama administration, because that deal was going to protect us from Iran building nuclear weapons. We no longer have that. We no longer have that protection. And a similar kind of a threat is from North Korea. They're there building their weapons. They can hit us now on the West Coast. I think as far as now as the East Coast.
I have to stop you, Julia. Sorry. Rhonda, same question to you. Which countries or stateless organizations do you feel are the greatest threats to the United States, and why?
Well, if we were in the 1980s, I would agree with Congresswoman Brownlee. However, we're in modern times, and the biggest threats right now are those ones that we don't really pay attention to, like Saudi Arabia and Iran. They practice barbaric Sharia law. Women there are oppressed. There was a documentary I just recently watched, because filming's not allowed there. Protesting isn't allowed there. The freedoms that we experience here, they don't experience them there. And I have to say that past administrations have turned a blind eye because we were so dependent on their fossil fuels and their oils that we ignored the humanitarian, absolutely appalling things that these countries did to women. Chop Chop Square is a square in the middle of a major city where individuals who did something as little as posting something on the internet they were beheaded, and the public is forced to watch so that nobody else speaks out against the regime. We need to look at those countries. They are an existential threat to the United States, especially when Sharia law comes to the United States and those practices are done here. I've represented many women in my practices who were in my legal practice who was trying to get away from husbands who practice Sharia law. We need to have humanitarian efforts and stop looking a blind eye at countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia. And I'm talking about on both sides of the aisle. Presidents have both catered to Saudi Arabia. We need to look at those countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. Going to start the next question with you. Veterans medical care has improved somewhat over the recent years, but many believe additional services are still needed. Do you believe the Veterans Administration is doing enough in the area of healthcare for our veterans? And if not, what specific programs do you believe need to be enhanced?
Is that my question? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry, Rhonda, that's for you.
Oh,
would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Sure, no problem. Veterans medical care has improved in recent years, but some believe that there's still more that should be done. Do you believe the Veterans Administration is doing enough in the area of healthcare? And if not, what specific programs do you believe need to be enhanced?
No, they're absolutely not doing enough. Our veterans are treated very badly. My dad is a 100% disabled Vietnam vet. And I can tell you the healthcare, they are the worst treated in the United States. We have our brand new veterans clinic here in Ventura County. The wait time is appalling. If you're a veteran with a knee issue or an orthopedic issue, it takes you 54 days. 54 days to get an orthopedic appointment. With my private insurance, I can call and I can get an orthopedic appointment within about 2 days. But it takes 54 days for a veteran to get an orthopedic appointment. It takes 11 days for a woman to get a gynecology appointment. Now imagine if a woman is going in for a pap smear and it's an average wait of 11 days. What if it's 11 days or two, or could be up to a month? Having a timely pap smear could be life-saving if that woman has any type of dysplasia cells or the start of cervical cancer, and that's a woman vet. Otherwise, I can go to my private doctor and I can get into my gynecologist in about a day. These numbers are staggering. We need to get those times down. We need to invest in more mental health for our veterans. They come, they're in war. They've seen some very horrific things. We need to get them more mental health treatment, and we need to shorten our times and overhaul the whole veteran system. Thank you.
Julia, same question. Medical care has improved somewhat, but many believe additional services are needed. Do you believe the VA is doing enough in the area of healthcare? And if not, what specific programs do you believe need to be enhanced?
I think the VA, we're improving. We still have a long ways to go. Veterans want healthcare close to home. That's why I've got this VA clinic that's going to open up here in 2021, where veterans will be able to go to a clinic and get their physical health care, their specialty care, all here at home. Mental health care is a huge issue within the VA. We still have 20 suicides a day. That's one suicide is way too much. 20 is off the charts. And so we have to work harder to provide better mental health services to our veterans. Women veterans is something that I have been working on over the last couple of years. And when we talk about women's health and the women's reproductive health within the VA, it's practically non-existent. We need to improve upon that. And in terms of wait times within the VA, sometimes they're too long. And so we have created a program where veterans are able to go out into their community. If they have to wait longer than 20 days for primary care or for mental health care, and then they can go into the community to get those services. But I passed a comprehensive bill, the Deborah Sampson bill, that includes all of the necessary healthcare benefits that the VA needs to do to provide for their women veterans.
Thank you, Julia. Next question, we'll start with you, Julia. In Ventura County, efforts have been made to promote the hiring of veterans. What strategies do you recommend to ensure veterans can find good jobs in our local economy?
Well, I think, Ventura County, I think, is really actually quite exceptional. There's so many employers here who are, as you said, hiring and focusing on our veteran community. And so I really applaud the business community in Ventura County. We need to do more. We need to promote, give incentives to businesses to promote, or to hire our veterans. So there are more federal programs that we can do to provide that kind of incentive. Obviously, the educational benefits for a veteran is critically important, not only to get a college degree, but to kind of retrain for the 21st century. There are programs out there that the veteran can access. But I would say, all in all, that Ventura County has done a really great job, and I really do applaud them for what they're doing. And I've been over to naval-based Ventura County, and they have a whole center over there, and employers are posting jobs. It's important. So there's a lot more that we need to do. We need to make sure that veterans know where those jobs are. So it's a matter of communicating, having a good website to inform veterans where to go, but employers are doing a good job reaching out to the veteran community.
Thank you, Julia. Rhonda, same question to you. In Ventura County, efforts have been made to promote the hiring of veterans. What strategies do you recommend to ensure veterans can find good jobs in our local economy?
Well, the first thing we have to do is ensure that there are jobs here, because with the current state of the economy and the closures of businesses due to the pandemic and the state being closed, there's not going to be any jobs left for veterans. But one of the things that I've been talking about and what I would like to do is actually go and recruit companies to move to Ventura County. One of my goals is to get SpaceX to come here and expand in Ventura County instead of moving to Texas. And with that will come high-paying skilled jobs. A lot of jobs would be perfect for veterans because a lot of veterans go into defense contracting or government contracting, which SpaceX contracts with the U.S. government. They're essentially a contractor that launches the satellites for the United States. So those are high-paying jobs that veterans here in Ventura County will be able to probably get first dibs at because they're federal contractors. And lastly, it's doing things like that and having education opportunities, heavily recruiting, giving incentives to businesses to come here and to hire our veterans is more important. But I have to stress again that we won't have any employers here if we continue on the same path. Thank you.
Rhonda. We're going to switch gears to infrastructure. So this is the issue of national facilities and services supporting modern life. It includes airports, roads, bridges, waterways, dams, electrical grids, the internet, broadband access, just to name a few. Rhonda, the first question is about the cost to repair roads, bridges, dams, and other infrastructure. That cost far exceeds federal spending in this area. So are there specific infrastructure problems that you believe should be the highest priority for any spending, both nationally and here in the district? And do you think this country spends enough on infrastructure?
Absolutely not. Our infrastructure here in Ventura County is crumbling. We have a few dams that I've been contacted by very concerned citizens that those dams are on the brink of failing. And if they do, we would have something on the scales of Katrina if they did, which was very terrifying for me. But absolutely not. There's not enough done on infrastructure. And there are also several, federal funding that we can get, grants in that. But the thing is that we have to be seen. Ventura County and CA 26 is not on the map in Congress. I've talked to several Congress representatives, told them what district I'm running for, and they have no idea where our district is or who represents us because the saying is the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and that is absolutely true. That's why a one-term Congresswoman, AOC, everyone knows who she is. And Ilhan Omar, everyone knows who she is. Tlaib, everyone knows who she is. Why? Because she's vocal. She speaks out for her district. We need a representative in Congress that's going to bring those federal dollars back to this district, that's going to bring those infrastructure dollars back to this district, that's going to be loud and say, my district needs the funding to the rest of Congress, and actually be that squeaky wheel to put Ventura County on the map so that we can have an equal share of that pie, because I am tired of seeing other districts and other states taking all those federal dollars and Ventura County being left with scraps. Thank you.
Julia, same question to you. What infrastructure problems do you believe should be the highest priority for any spending, both nationally and here in the district? And do you think this country spends enough on infrastructure?
No, this country doesn't spend enough on infrastructure. And I sit on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in Washington, D.C. I know that it would require $100 billion just to get our roads and bridges in a good state, a good state of repair, and that's really unacceptable. So we need to absolutely invest more. We pass a massive infrastructure bill out of the House. It was the largest and greenest and cleanest infrastructure bill ever passed in the history of Congress out of the House. We need to invest in our infrastructure, but we need to invest in a way that we build a clean economy. We have a win-win situation here, I think, in terms of investing, but investing smartly so that we can get to a clean economy and not dependent on fossil fuels anymore, only dependent on renewable energy. But here at home, it is, every year every year, our ports and harbors become a very important element within what the work that I do in Washington, because I've got to advocate to make sure that the ports and harbors get dredged. We have our own general aviation airports here, 2 of them that need help and support.
Thank you,
So I
Julia.
work very hard in that
have to
area.
stop you there, Julia. Sorry.
Nope.
Okay, Julia, we're going to begin the next question with you. With the closing of schools earlier this year, the need for those students to have online learning, it became quite evident that many children suffer due to a lack of internet connectivity and equipment. Do you believe there should be a national push to provide free or low-cost internet access to all households?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we were talking earlier about systemic racism and racial inequality, this is a fundamental piece of it. Access to broadband, to be able to access the internet wherever you live. And this is where, children, if they don't have access to this, they're gonna, they're gonna fall behind on their education. It is highlighted even more so right now as we live through this pandemic, where children don't have the access they need to have online learning. So this is critically important. Part of the infrastructure bill that I was talking about earlier had a major investment in broadband. We need the entire country to be connected. It's important for our children, it's important for our businesses, it's important for our national security, all of the above. So yes, this needs to be a big priority of the federal government, and no child should not have the equipment necessary and the access necessary to be able to learn and to be able to learn at high levels.
Rhonda, same question. Do you believe there should be a national push to provide free or low-cost internet access to all households?
Yes, absolutely. I think there should be a national push, and I also think that the states should have done more as well. California should have stepped up, and had I been the representative for CA 26, I would have had a conversation with Governor Newsom and said, this is not going to work for my district. We have a lot of low income and people who are English is their second language, that now they're stuck at home. Some of them are single moms. They're stuck at home trying to teach their kids while they're trying to also go to work and make a living. Those who can go to work and make a living and pay that rent and put food on their tables. I think that schools have high budget. School districts have really high budgets, especially LA County. And if schools are closed and the students aren't there, why couldn't the districts that are run by the unions, why couldn't those districts take some of that money and give the parents give an allotted amount of money to each student so that parents can take that money, go buy a laptop, go buy an iPad, buy internet. But right now, that whole entire budget is going to the schools, but yet the students are at home using their house as their new classroom. That money needs to go to the parents. That is a way to working with the districts and working with the state that parents could have gotten relief now instead of waiting for Congress to get their act together and actually pass the stimulus relief package. Thank you.
Thank you. Rhonda, next question. So even before the pandemic, Rhonda, it seemed Congress and the administration were unable to pass any significant bills funding infrastructure. Many Americans believe both parties should be able to work on this issue together in a bipartisan manner to help the country. Yet it seems nothing was accomplished. Why do you think Congress can't work together on something that most people support? And what will you do differently if elected?
Well, the first thing I would do is get Nancy Pelosi out as a speaker because she is so divisive. She has her own personal agenda and we are suffering. I am so tired of politicians using Congress and using the authority that the people bestow onto them through elections to go and abuse it and use their own personal agendas. She hates the president so much that nothing gets done. We need somebody who is willing to reach across that aisle and actually get stuff done. I have no problem with my Democrats on the other side. I actually admire a lot of them. And I think there's a lot of women there and other people there of color that I can actually reach across the aisle and get stuff done, because at the end of the day, we all want the same things as Americans. And I think it's representative, and it's very shameful that there's only been one Black Republican representative in Congress. We are all Americans. My ancestors and Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement was done so that I, as a Black woman, have the right to choose my own political party, not to be ostracized and called names and racial slurs because I chose a political party that I'm comfortable with. But at the end of the day, we're all Americans, and we all need to work together. And absolutely, we need to get infrastructure bills passed and move America forward, not be stuck in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia, why do you think Congress can't work together on something as fundamental as infrastructure and that's supported by so many people? What will you do differently?
Well, actually, I think there's a lot of bipartisanship around infrastructure in Congress. I think the problem right now with regards to a very significant infrastructure bill that will get Americans back to work is that in 2017, the Republicans passed this, big tax scam that gave $2 trillion to corporations and the wealthiest of Americans. And so that's a problem. They're worried about the deficit. They're worried about spending, another $2 trillion. And so I think, if we can settle on that tax and look at some reforms, I think we can get back to a place where infrastructure is much more of a bipartisan issue. Trump wants to do infrastructure, but yet he doesn't want to roll up his sleeves and really kind of get involved. But infrastructure is going to be critically important to our economic recovery, to get Americans back to work. And climate, quite frankly, is the existential threat, and we need to address the climate crisis. And if we don't, it's going to be too late. And so it is critically important that we invest in clean energy, we invest in our roads and transit. It's important that we invest in our water supply and delivery systems so that all Americans have clean water. There is so much to be done.
Thank you. Candidates, we've reached the 1 hour mark, and we'll have to begin closing statements. We had a lot of great questions left, but thank you both for the cogent answers. I'm going to reverse the order now for closing statements. Rhonda, you'll go first. You'll have 2 minutes. Whenever you're ready, please begin.
Thank you. Well, I heard a lot of divisiveness tonight. And I want to say, when you say things, when our current Congressman says things like they, them, Republicans, it's very divisive. I did not particularly pick out or say what one side did wrong, what the other side did wrong, because at the end of the day, we're all Americans, we're all humans. There are mistakes made on both sides. There are biases made on both sides. And if we always have a them against us mentality, we will never get anything done. I'm not divisive. I can work with anyone. I've shown that every single day when I reach settlement agreements, when I reach plea deals in my profession as an attorney. And as far as the relief package goes, I have my hairdresser, who's a small business owner, Black in South Central. She has a beauty shop. She didn't get any money from the relief. She was turned down because her credit score dropped so far during the closure. I want to make sure people like her are taken care of, because Congress should ensure that if you're closed for 3 months, 8 months in Los Angeles County, that at least those who suffered, their credit scores suffered, that they would qualify for some of that relief money. So while the package, the stimulus package has money allotted for small businesses, a lot of those small businesses, particularly minority businesses, they're not going to get any of that relief money. And if I was in Congress, I would make sure that those things were looked at and addressed. Why? Because I am in the community every single day. I'm not just NCA 26. I visit South Central. I visit Watts. I have my finger to the pulse of this state, and I know what's going on, and I know how to represent America in Congress and make sure that equality is reached. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next candidate, Julia Brownlee, when you're ready, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I love policy, but I love helping my constituents even more. Each one of the 8,000 cases we've handled is a story. We don't always win, but when we do, it changes lives. I was recently approached about the case of a mom, undocumented, an essential worker with 4 adult children. One of her daughters had life-threatening health issues that needed her mother's care. ICE had stayed the mother's deportation order for years, but not under Trump. She was given a week to pack her bags. So I drafted legislation. 2 days before she had to leave the country, I called to tell her that I was able to get Democrats and Republicans on the Judiciary Committee to formally consider our legislation, and that ICE granted another stay as a result. The family could barely speak through their tears of joy, and neither could I. Another case that comes to mind is of a Marine who during Vietnam put his life on the line to save his men. He would have been awarded a Medal of Honor for his heroism, except this Marine was Black and less than 3% of Medal of Honor recipients are African American. Because of the many years that had passed, he was no longer eligible according to the law, so I drafted legislation. Paul Ryan was the speaker at the time, and it needed his blessing to move forward. So I dug in my heels and set out to convince him, and succeeded. The bill passed the House and the Senate with overwhelming bipartisan support and was signed into law. One of my greatest honors was being in the White House to see this very humble, very courageous man receive our nation's highest military decoration. The lives of both of these constituents were changed because I was able to help, and mine was changed for having been able to do so. I would be honored with your support to be able to continue to serve you in Congress.
I have to stop you there. So thank you both candidates. Thank you to the university. Before we wrap up though, we have a couple of important things. I want to show a short presentation that will interest viewers. But before I do that, I want to take a moment to thank everybody at CI and the League. Brian Goodman, Mackenzie Erickson, Joanna Murphy for their help with the webinar and graphics. Kim Gregory Lamb and Nancy Gill for media outreach. Selena Zacharias in the Office of the President for their efforts to make this happen. Jared Barton, Assistant Professor of Economics, for helping to make this happen as well. From the League, you met Betsy Patterson, our president, earlier. Pat Essick, our voter service chair, and throughout these forums, we've had help from Elizabeth, Ruby, Cheryl, and Maddie, our great timer. I'm David Marin, League of Women Voters member. But before anybody goes anywhere, please take a moment to take a look at this short presentation. The League reminds you that everybody should have received their mail-in ballots by now. Mail-in ballots were sent to all registered voters in California. You can return these ballots through the Postal Service or at a secure authorized ballot box or at one of the voting centers when they open a few days before election. We also want to remind you about some resources. There's where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. This is a website you can register your name and track your ballot as it moves through the post office, the elections department, to being counted. That's a valuable resource for you. The last day to register is October 19th, and the League recommends that everybody return their ballots via the mail if you're going to do that by October 20th. That'll allow sufficient time for the Postal Service to get those ballots to our local elections department to be counted on election night. Now, it's important to remember that as long as your ballot is postmarked November 3rd, it'll still be counted as long as it's received within 17 days. And that leads us to the issue that we may not have results on election night. We all will need to be patient as votes are tallied over the next week or two due to the coronavirus and the policies that are put in place. Another valuable resource is votersedge.org. You can go to this website, put in your address, and find all the candidates running in your area. You can find out about ballot propositions and read very informative information about them. The League of Women Voters website is lwvventuracounty.org. You can visit that website to learn more about the League, and you can go back and look at any of the forums that we've already hosted. We've been to virtually every city council, actually probably was every city council in Ventura County. You can see those. You can also see this video in about a week once it's been processed and put up on the website. We are going to be adding closed captions, so that's why it'll take a short time for that. Again, I want to thank the university, the team, everybody at the League. Remind everybody that the election day is November 3rd, and one other special request. When you send in a mail-in ballot, make sure you sign the outside envelope, fill in your name and address, but it is imperative that you sign that outside envelope. For many people, this is the first time they've ever voted by mail, so we encourage everyone to do that. With that, thank you to everyone. Thank you for watching. Good night.